when you start a business, for example, you will have no clients, no revenue, no anything, right? So you have to go from zero to something. And in that case, growth is good. But then there can come a point where growth might not be what is best for you as an owner, or what is best for you as a business, or even what is best for your customers. So the point of the book is just, to question growth, because it makes sense completely sometimes. And if we don't challenge it, we'll always just assume that growth is always good. And that's a bad thing.
So when you were deciding that you wanted to move into the woods, designing your life, what are some of the things that you said for yourself that defined success?
Freedom is the main thing, right? Like, I work for myself, not because it's easier, because it's not, but because I want the freedom to say, okay, I want to work with this person, or I don't want to work with this person, or this company's values don't align with mine, so maybe I don't want to work with them, I want to work with somebody else. Or I want to sell this type of product versus this type of product, or I want to not work for 4 months and not have to ask for 2 weeks vacation kind of thing. So for me, it's freedom, it's choice, it's being able to say, if this is the type of business that I want, and these are the type of people that I want to serve, then how can I best do that?
And so when you were leaving in your van, with your wife, was that a time of deep reflection too, when you were thinking, this is where we're going to start making a change? Or what was the process around you deciding we're out of here?
It was mostly just anger and frustration, and just like, okay, we've had enough. The deep reflection came after, because when you move to the middle of nowhere and you remove all of that stimulus, you're just left with your own thoughts, which is scary, very scary. So yeah, the deep reflection came after that, because we removed almost all the stimulus. Like, we didn't have a social group out here. Like, we just kind of up and left. And then in dealing with it was just, okay, well, there's a lot to think about now.
So when you said you were hearing your thoughts, was that the first time you'd heard your thoughts, and your wife too?
Yeah, I think so. Like, we'd been coming to the island most weekend. That was the other thing. Like, we realized every moment we got free, we would escape the city. And we were like, why do we keep coming back? If all we want to do is escape, why do we keep returning? And when we left, it was probably the first time, because there was so much going on all the time in the city, and there's none of that out here. There's not even, you pass the one store that this area has. You drove past it.
I think I missed it.
What was it?
You probably blinked. Yeah, you blinked.
What was it? What's it called? Because we're going to hit it on the way back. Because Esther and I, when we were driving past the store, I was looking at the store and she was looking at the notes. So that's why you missed it. But what is it called?
I don't even think I'm not sure it has a name. Everybody just calls it Dave's, because the guy who owns it's called Dave.
Nice.
It's just Dave's store.
So I love that you brought up your thoughts, because I've actually been spending a lot of time thinking about my thoughts recently, and thinking about them in the context of, my business and my relationships. When you were hearing your thoughts for the first time, especially because I don't know at that point if you were an entrepreneur or not, and I do want to ask that later, but were your thoughts scary? And what was happening when you were hearing your thoughts?
Yeah, very scary. I think it's kind of the issue that people have when they first encounter like meditation. Like, it's really hard to just sit with yourself, like really, really hard to do that, because I think a lot of us spend so much time trying to push that out, or dull it out, or fill our lives with anything other than our own thoughts, right? Like, we can't just stand in line anymore. We have to be standing in line, like flipping on Instagram or something like that, or listening to a podcast when you go for a run. Like, every single second of every single day, we feel like we have to fill. If something happens on the internet, I don't know, unless I log into Twitter. I don't know if I have an email unless I log into email. And in doing that, I'm not distracted every couple minutes or every couple seconds, I guess. I can just kind of sit down and get to work. And what I find is it's hard for the first couple minutes, and then it gets easier. And then you just kind of like get in the zone, and then you just kind of like, time kind of goes away, and you're just able to focus and get things done. And then If I want to do email, then all I'm doing is focusing on email. If I want to do Twitter, all I'm doing is focusing on Twitter. And in doing it kind of sequentially, instead of trying to say, oh, I'm just going to do all of the things all at the same time, things just happen faster, I think.
So when you came out here with your wife, and I just want to go back to this because this to me is getting to one of the questions I want to ask you about when you decided to become Paul Jarvis, right? When you were driving here with your wife, and it was a drive of frustration, and relief was coming, you think, but it was frustration. When you got here and you landed, how long did it take for the two of you? And I don't know if it was a joint venture or if it was an individual process for you, but how long did it take before you calmed down and started having time to actually think?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was probably 6 months to a year, I think. It took some time. It took a lot of going to yoga and surfing every single day before work. Those two things really help slow the mind down. So I think that, in conjunction with living in the middle of nowhere, it was a process. It wasn't just like, oh my God, we're on the island now, it's calm. I mean, that does happen. Like when you get off the ferry, it's a totally different vibe than when you're getting on the ferry kind of thing. We feel every time we go to the mainland or go to Washington State, we feel that, where as soon as we land here, it's like a bit of a sigh of relief. So there is that, but to fully get to where we got to, it took months.
And in that process, did you have fear?
Yes.
A lot or a
Yes.
little?
Yes, all of it.
What was the fear?
That I couldn't unwind. I still have that fear a little bit because it's not like it goes away completely. That if we were making a mistake because all of our friends were in Vancouver, I do work remote. I've worked remote for 20 years, but I made a lot of connections in Vancouver because I moved there and lived there right when tech was starting in that city. And so I was pretty well connected, and it's like, okay, well, now I'm going to be like 6-7 hours away from that. Like, are people going to remember me to like work together kind of thing? So yeah, I mean, those fears were definitely there, and they've kind of gone away a little bit, but they're still there a bit.
How?
I don't know.
I mean, because fear is a real thing, especially when you're an entrepreneur. So how have you overcome that fear? Because you said it took 6 months or more to calm down. Mm-hmm. And then it took time within that process to not be afraid, but you still were. And sometimes it still rears its ugly head to you.
Yeah.
So what is your process to, get rid of it?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a proportionate fear and disproportionate fear. So like if I'm swimming with sharks, I'm going to be afraid, and I should be. Makes sense. But I also think that fear can be a bit of a driver as well. Like if I'm afraid that, I don't know, if I'm afraid that my business isn't going to make it, like if I'm just starting out, for example, then it might push me to do the work to make it happen instead of just wishing it happens. I think that fear can go away with action as well. So if I'm afraid to do something, the second I start to do it, I have a bit less fear. When I accomplish that thing, then I have less fear. So the fear can drive me to, okay, if I just start this thing, I'm going to feel a bit better. So let's do that. Or if I finish this thing, then I'm going to feel a bit better. So let's push to there. I mean, that can get a little unhealthy as well. But I do think that can be a bit of a motivator for sure for me, where it's like, well, I want to do well. I don't need to be Mark Zuckerberg or something, but like I do want to do well. I want to provide for my family. And so I like to, push myself forward and do things like write books, make software, all the things that I do.